Really good to be here. I've had a fantastic week here in India. It's been a road trip that my team have taken me on. We kicked off the week in Bangalore, we then went to Chennai, and now we're finishing the week here in Mumbai at this fantastic event. My name is James Conway, APJ Director at Temporal. Really looking forward to kind of the next 30 to 40 minutes. We're going to cram in quite a lot. We're going to do a demo, we're going to do a quiz, and we're going to keep you all super engaged. What I'd like to do is, I said to my wife that I was in India this week, and I was hanging around to do a presentation on a Saturday. And I cannot believe we've got so many people in the room here on a Saturday, and I'm not convinced that she believed that I was actually working on a Saturday, and I think she thinks that I'm either lying by the pool or doing some sightseeing here in Mumbai. So I'm going to ask everyone to help me send a message to my wife. Are we up for that? Yeah? Sounds like you are. So this is going to be another selfie, but it's going to be a message to my wife, and I'd like you all to stand up if that's okay. We've just had a great presentation from Lewis. Let's stand up. Let's shake ourselves out, and I think if you can help me with this selfie, that would be great. So please feel free to wave or send any kind of... Okay. Are we all good? Ready? We'll do 1, 2, 3, and we'll do a wave, okay? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Please take a seat. Oh, the cameraman liked that, right? I don't think we can repeat it. It's not too genuine, but... So my presentation today is about unlocking AI-ready workflows, basically creating resilient, reliable workflows that are production-ready, enterprise-grade. I will be joined on stage by my colleague Darshit, who will be taking us through a live demo, and then we'll be doing a quiz at the end. So I think the first thing that I would like to do is, this is a community event, and therefore I do want to engage within the community. So can I have a show of hands, please, for anyone here who has actually heard of Temporal? I like that. There are some hands. And please keep your hands raised if you've actually used Temporal, be it on a local machine, at work. Okay, so there are a few of you in the room that have heard of Temporal, which is good to hear. I'd like to spend a few minutes taking you through who we are and what we do. So with Temporal, we're a durable execution platform that allows developers and engineers to create durable, resilient, and reliable apps at internet scale. We're 20 years in the making. This is not new technology that is an overnight success. It started back in 2004 with Max and Samar, our founders, who basically built simple queue service at AWS and Amazon, then moved to build simple workflow service. Samar led the team that ended up building Azure Durable Functions. And then in 2015, they worked together again to create the Cadence project. Some of you may be familiar with our open source project. And then in 2019, they set up and created Temporal. Temporal today has over 500,000 open source users, a fantastic and thriving community, and a fantastic community here in India. This week has just been phenomenal, meeting the community, meeting customers, meeting partners, and really engaging with that community. And we also have a managed service of Temporal, which is called Temporal Cloud. And we have over 2,500 customers on cloud, and that does include some India customers in this region. So we're doing well as a company. And what I'd like to talk about is this durable execution piece. And ultimately, Temporal is a durable execution platform, allowing you to create durable applications. Ultimately, it's an abstraction layer. It allows developers and engineers to really focus on the business logic. And what do we deliver? What does Temporal ultimately deliver as the value prop? Well, it allows developers and engineers to build applications faster, thus time to market. It creates reliable applications. So when failures happen, Temporal recovers processes where they left off. And it provides insight by tracking application state and therefore providing observability. So I thought what we would talk about is AI, building agentic AI apps. I promise you this week, I've probably done 20 plus meetings, and there wasn't one meeting where they didn't talk about AI. And yesterday, Darshit had me around Mumbai in the back of a rickshaw, going to meeting, and in every meeting, it was AI, AI, AI. Okay, so how do we think of these AI systems? How do we look at them? Ultimately, we believe they're distributed systems in disguise. And why is that? Because when you look at an AI architecture or an AI infrastructure, it can often seem quite scary. It can almost be like a new frontier. But when you take that mask off, when you look a little bit closer, ultimately, you're seeing the same challenges that developers and engineers have tried to solve for decades. Challenges on scale, challenges around data pipelines. Big data engineers have had the challenges around moving data, validating data, transforming data, and that is exactly the same in this AI world. Challenges around orchestration and coordination. Ultimately, an AI framework, an AI system, is a network of asynchronous processes. It is a web of connections, and therefore coordinating and managing those is clearly a challenge. And then with every application, you have to make sure that application is reliable and there has to be observability. So when you take that mask off, when you look at it, it's not magic, okay? The same challenges exist, whether it's an AI system or another application. Ultimately, we believe an AI system is simply a distributed system in disguise. So here is a framework. Here is a very simple diagrammatic approach to looking at an AI application, an AI system. And what we've got here, we've got a user that is interfacing with an LLM. That might be Bedrock at AWS. That may be ChatGPT. And in the beginning, when you look at that, ChatGPT comes across just like one brain, but it's more than that. You'll have a user that talks to a LLM, which in return talks to a dispatch agent, which has to coordinate with a specialist agent through MCP connectors, has to pull in RAG stores, connect with REST services, connect with audit services for governance and compliance. And what you can see here, you can see this web of asynchronous processes running in parallel. It is a network of connections. Now, these connections, these systems, are not miraculously stuck together by glue. Developers and engineers spend a lot of time actually working on the plumbing, figuring out the failure points, figuring out where will this break, how does this process stick to this process. And we believe the research that we've done, the conversations that we've had with developers and engineers all over the world, that 80% of a developer's time is actually around this plumbing. And it's not around the business logic, building cool new features, delivering the application as fast as they can. It's about figuring out the plumbing, because ultimately, even with all this plumbing, building out the retries, building out queue systems, queues, everyone keeps telling me, the amount of queues you're building, messaging services, timers, even with all this plumbing, guess what? Everything fails anyway, and everything is going to fail. Therefore, developers and engineers spend a huge amount of time building in rate timer, making sure that a process probably crashes halfway through. Databases fail, queues overrun. So everything fails anyway. And therefore, this is where Temporal fits in. And Temporal orchestrates that entire agentic AI workflow. You simply tell Temporal what you want to happen, and Temporal takes care of it. Temporal manages all of those retries. Temporal manages those queues that overrun, those API timeouts, the database that fails, so that your developers and engineers can really focus on the cool stuff, which is the business logic. So we flip this on its head with Temporal. We say, typical modern applications, be it AI or being any other distributed system, this is where developers spend their time. But through Temporal, we flip that around and say, actually, your developers, your engineers can spend most of their time focusing down here on the core business logic and only a small amount of time actually on the plumbing code. Developers, engineers love working with Temporal, and this is why Temporal is the most trusted platform for orchestrating those workflows, making them reliable, building for internet scale, and you simply use your language using one of our open source SDKs. Temporal abstracts away the need for that distributed systems plumbing and manages those retries for you. There's timers, those queues. And then what do you get with that? You get durable execution. You get improved reliability. All your workflows and your tools complete successfully in spite of those failures that you've seen. So we'd love to show you this in action. We're going to do a demo. So please come on stage, Darshit, and get yourself set up for this demo. Also, I do want to point out that the Temporal team will be here. So if after this session you've got a question, you'd like to engage, you'd like to learn a little bit more, then of course, please, we've got Ayush, we've got Darshit, we've got myself. Love to take some questions after the session. We couldn't fit the Q&A in today. So we're going to do a demo. The great thing about Temporal and doing demos is that our demo is all about if something fails, if there is a retry, which gives us a bit of a get out that when the demo does fail, it was on purpose, right? It was by design, which is why we're not afraid to do a demo. So we're going to spend some time doing a demo. I'm going to ask Darshit a few questions, and then we're going to have a fantastic quiz at the end of this session, and hopefully give away some swag and give away some goodies. So can we give a big round of applause for Darshit, who's going to do this live demo? Never easy in front of a packed house, but we thought it would be worth it to actually show you this in action, because Temporal really comes alive when you're seeing it in action. So Darshit, welcome to the stage.
Hi, everyone.
Can we turn this mic on? Is it on? Let's just make sure we're set up.
Am I audible?
Try again, Darshit.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir. So
Okay,
firstly,
perfect.
Darshit, how are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you, James. Thank you for inviting me here. Hi, everyone. I am Darshit Vora. I am the Staff Solutions Architect here with Temporal, mainly focusing with the India customers and helping the community here. So I've taken a huge risk, James, here, showcasing it very live demo, and we are going to see a demo of an intelligent loan underwriting agentic AI sample application. How do we go through it? And what we are essentially doing here is, you'll see a sample UI here, but what we are essentially seeing here is not a chatbot, but a loan underwriting system in itself is a very complex distributed system. What happens behind the scene is you will have multiple systems to talk to, and you will have a multi-phase, multi-step process. Now, ideally, when in a very simplistic world, when you apply for a loan and when your loan gets approved behind the scene, what happens is it pulls up data from a lot of different sources. You will get your data from credit bureaus, your banks, you'll have some documents which needs to be processed. You will have market intelligence and other data, which are like third-party data which they pull in. The second step which happens is going through each one of them and analyzing what is the data looking like. Yeah. Okay, and the next phase in that is, once we get all of this data, we actually aggregate this data, and a human will come into picture who will research this. A loan underwriter or the analyst or the officer will go through this data and get into approving the loan or rejecting the loan or asking for a few more questions. So ideally, how do we make this? What are the challenges in this system? As you can see, we are talking to a number of systems. Louis defined it very well. We have to make sure the application needs to be reliable, right, in a simplistic way, as well as there'll be failures, right? So we need to have resilience, and we have to recover from that failure and go to the next step. On top of that, you will have different, so that is where the retries shine. You will have different timeouts. You will have, you also need to have what is called as talking to different how do we make it intelligent? Is basically adding the Gen AI layer or adding calls to tools and agents, etc., and getting the aggregation layer out of it. Now, LLMs are very, very probabilistic. It can fail, and we need to have observability in place where we can trace it well, we can have instrumentation well. So let's have a look at the flow first. How does it do? So let's say I want to have a loan of $5,000, right? And I am submitting the loan, right? And each loan here is basically a temporal workflow, right? So if you see your loan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's a workflow ID. So essentially, if you see here, right, this is what is temporal web UI, right, what you'll see, and you will see a workflow here, which has got triggered behind the scene. Now what essentially you are seeing here is the step-by-step process, the whole workflow, how is it processing from zero to each step of it. So if we see the 4 phases that I spoke about, right, in the first 3 steps, this is the whole of this is a workflow. The whole loan is a workflow which makes sure that guaranteed when I start, it comes to an end state, which is a successful state or a rejected state for an application. The second step to this is we are talking to multiple systems. So in this case, what we have simulated is we are talking to the credit bureaus like CIBIL, we are talking to banks, we are talking to document providers which the user can upload, and each one of them is behind the scene a Strands SDK which is talking to a HTTP, which is using HTTP request tools and talking to different providers, right? What happens, why just not a simple HTTP request, and why we are using GenAI here is because every bank you may know will have a different way to give back the data. What do we extract out of it? How do we extract out of it? And how do we even validate that data? That is where it shines. The next step is, if you see here, this is showing the whole event history of the whole process. And if we see, we are also seeing how much time it took, what was the input, and how did it succeed. Basically getting whole of the tracing and observability in a simplistic way. So, yeah, so basically what we are seeing here is, the process here is, first we are seeing the fetching of data. The second is the specialized agents, which are assessing the data, basically analyzing your expense, income, and the credit scores. And finally, there is an aggregate agent who is aggregating all of this data, giving to an LLM, which is hosted on Ollama here, which is Llama 3.2 here, and basically giving you a report to an underwriter to make a decision whether he should reject or accept the loan. So if you see, this is now waiting for a human input. Now this can wait for few seconds, few months, few days, years, right? It's immaterial, or you can even have timer to expire this. Let's go back to our application and let's figure out what this data is, right? So right now I don't have any database behind the scene, which is specially managing whole state. Whole of this state is managed by Temporal as a workflow. So it's managing the state, it's managing your retry logics, your timeouts, everything that fails behind the scene. And if it fails, it automatically goes back and retries after a backup coefficient without doing any of the heavy lifting or code behind the scene. Let's fetch this data. And if we see here, we have got the data from different source providers, right? So the different tools that provided data. And we also have an assessment report, which is provided by the LLM, right? So now what this is saying is, okay, I have a satisfactory credit score, fantastic, I can get loans, get this loan approved, but there is some conditions that needs to be done, right? So now, as a human, I have to figure out, right, whether I have to approve this loan or reject. Let's say I have decided, okay, I'll go ahead and approve this loan. Okay, fantastic. As soon as I click this, what happens if you see here behind the scene, we have received a signal, right, from the external source, which is a human entity, and they have approved this loan, and we have moved forward, right? Okay. So this is a happy part. Everything is work is fantastic.
So that worked. That was perfect. But what would happen, Darshit, if there was a failure? Be it a database crash, a process crashes halfway through, an API timeout, a queue failing. What happens then?
Fantastic. That is where the Temporal will shine a lot, right? So what we are doing essentially here is, if you see here, there are some mock APIs behind the scene, right? The CIBIL, the Experian, etc. What we have done is, if the CIBIL fails, we want to fail back to Experian, right? Or even the Ollama as a provider, if it fails, what happens, right? So let's say I am just quitting the LLM provider, right? So there's a network glitch with your Bedrock or whatever Ollama you are using, it's not working as of now, right? And what happens? Let's see. So let me trigger a different workflow. Let's say James needs a loan. Yeah, and I'm triggering a workflow here. So what essentially we have done here is there'll be a workflow which will be triggered. Fantastic. So what I've done is the Olama is not working right now. If you see here, there are failures and it's automatically retrying. Let me bring it back. Yeah, it's now up and running. Let's see if it comes back. Yeah. So that's where we see, right? Even if the LLM provider fails, for you, the experience doesn't change behind the scene. For your end user, it automatically retries from wherever it has failed, right? And it will come back to that stage. Let's say if we have an API failure, what I'll do is I'll just switch this off, right? And I'll just fail the API completely for a new workload. So what we have done here is, in this scenario, what I'm trying to do is I'm showcasing a failure in which the provider is failing, and we have, in the workflow, what we have done is switch back to a different provider, fallback. Try to do this on your own without Temporal. See how much time it takes. You will have to figure out your states. You will have to figure out your circuit breakers. You will have to figure out your retry logics. You will have to figure out your timeouts. And you will have to, on top of this, you'll have to figure out all your queues and the buses that you'll have behind the scene, right? So there'll be too much of plumbing that you'll have to do. But if you go ahead with this will essentially do is something like this, right? So I'm taking a liberty to jump onto the code, but essentially this is like a 2-line of code in your workflow within that activity that I'm just retrying. It's a configuration that you are doing at the end of the day, and Temporal as a platform is handling everything else for you. Now, okay, so now these two are very good failures, right? So we have seen like third-party API failures, LLM provider failure, but we have, let's say your infrastructure fails. I think James pointed out, suppose there is a database conversation which is happening, or suppose this is working on a Kubernetes pod or a EC2 instance behind the scene. You have handled few things which is at the infrastructure layer, but at the code layer, you have not done that, right? So what happens is Temporal decouples this, right? So once the workflow starts, the worker is responsible for executing your code. Let me do and break this, right? Let me break the worker altogether, right? So let's start a new workflow. And what I'll end up doing is, so what I've done here is, there's a worker which is running. I'll kill that, right? So start a workflow. And I've killed the worker. Let's see what was the workflow. It's loan 56, right? So let's check that. So what has happened is we have fetched the data from bank. The workflow is still in that state because it's not working. Behind the scene, there is no worker who is processing that. The EC2 has collapsed. Your EKS has collapsed. Anything can be possible, or there is a network glitch. Let's say we bring back the worker. What happens? I'm bringing back the worker. Let's see the state of it. So as you can see, from that point of time, it exactly figured out, and it started from that particular state. What is happening behind the scene is we have event history and we have event replay in action, right? So it's replaying the whole event. It is not again hitting the bank API, but whatever output or whatever state it was, it is getting from that state and it's working towards the next step to process it, right? So anything which has failed, right? So Werner says this all the time, right? Everything can fail all the time. And what we try to do with Temporal is making that completely irrelevant, right? So that's what this is. So be it your distributed system, be it your agentic AI orchestration, Temporal will shine.
Great stuff, Darshit. Please, that worked and failed. So final question for you, Darshit, is how does your demo fit in with Strands and Temporal?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. How does the coexistence of both of them happen? Because at times, even with Strands and other workflows, you will start seeing having patterns like multi-agent collaboration patterns, etc. Where does Temporal shine is your overall orchestration workflow. Most of the SDKs, when you have agentic SDKs, you will not have durability layer. right? So whenever you have the outer loop in this, basically the whole loan workflow that we have, the outer loop, we are getting the state management, we are getting the durability, we are getting the resiliency of recovery from failures, and we are also getting the complete scalability of it with workers. Where does trans fit in? Is in this particular demo, where does trans fit in is within the activity. So we have workflow and we have activities. So within the activities, whenever you want to communicate with the LLM, all the LLM in jobs, be it agent creating tools, having agents collaborating within the activity. Activity is something which can fail and recover, right? So at a particular point of time. So or connecting to LLM providers. So the multi-agent collaboration within an activity is where Strands will shine, and everything else can be orchestrated via Temporal.
Great stuff. Thank you, Darshi. A big round of applause for Darshi on that live demo. I'm going to switch you back to the slide.
Yeah.